Hi artists, this is Mrs. RT. Today I want you to think about what different types of weather you've seen. You've probably seen rainy days, sunny days, snowy days, and today we're going to look at the story Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and look at the different types of weather that they have in this town that the story is about. After we read the story, we're going to make our own pictures of a person in all kinds of different food weather. So you'll see on this picture, there's all different food falling from the sky, and even the little drops that look like raindrops, if you look closely, they're actually orange juice rain with orange juice puddles. So we're going to start with the story, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And while we're listening to the story, think about what kinds of food you want to draw for your weather. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice, and Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we would each eat. And Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed towards the kitchen ceiling, and it landed on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan. All of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay a tiny town called Choose and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses, and trees, and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in this town of Choose and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Choose and Swallow was the weather. It came 3 times a day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Whatever the weather served, that's what the people would eat. But it never rained rain or snowed snow. It never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas. And sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. So you can see on this TV, the weather person is saying it will be cloudy with a chance of meatballs. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way they could always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in the refrigerator in case they became hungry in between meals. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. A brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny side up eggs moved in, followed by a piece of toast, butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. For lunch one day, hot dogs, already in their rolls, blew from the northwest wind at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby, and then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked beans were followed by gradual clearing, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department of the town of Choose and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses, sidewalks, and lawns. The workers cleaned up after every meal and fed the extras to the dogs and cats. Then they would empty some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish, turtles, and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's gardens. Life for the town's people was delicious, but the weather took a turn for the worst. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next day there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts with peanut butter and mayo. Another day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread, rye, and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread or rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up so much bread, as much bread as they could in their backyards, and the birds picked at it a bit, but it stayed there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning, and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Lunch one day brought a 15-inch drift of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomach ache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses were badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Choose and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. The people glued together giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter, and took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts to a new land. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build a temporary house for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and adults all tried to find places for themselves in their new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept on shelves packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had been cooked was kept in a refrigerator. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again, and nobody dared to go back to the town of Choose and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the end of Grandpa's story. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside the window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go outside sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant piece of butter at the top of the mountain, and we could almost smell the mashed potatoes. The end. So that was our story of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And now what we're going to do is make our own Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball picture. So I'm going to show you how I did the outline of this person and a little bit of the food. You can make your own person as well, but I'll show you how I started this one, and I'll show you a little bit of the food that I made. So I started with a circle for the head, and you can draw yours differently, just try your best. A small rectangle for the neck. And since my person was out in all this weather, I put them in a rain jacket and boots. So for the arms, I made one arm that goes down and the other arm going up holding the umbrella. So I start on this side, go around and down for the arm, short line in for the sleeve and back up. And we can go down for the body and across for the bottom to connect the jacket. Other arm comes out and up, so that it can hold that umbrella. Two rectangles for the legs. And then for the rain boots, I came down, around for the foot, and back up. Down, around for the foot, and back up. And some curved lines for the hands. And then for the umbrella, I started with a big curved line for the top and 3 curves for the bottom. Then we can make that line down around to the hand for them to hold the umbrella. For some details, I made a line up from each of the bottom of those curves. Okay, now you can add your own details to your character. You can give them any kind of hairstyle you want. You can add a face. I'm going to show you just a few details that I added on mine. I added the ground line. And then all different types of food. So I'll just show you a few that I made. This one is a hamburger. And you can think about your favorite foods, maybe what you ate for breakfast or lunch. Draw some fruit raining from the sky. An apple and some grapes. You could even do some that look like raindrops, but when you color them in, maybe they're orange juice or apple juice. Maybe a little apple juice puddle. Could make a donut on yours. So now I want you to take some time, add detail to your person. You can give them details on the clothes, the umbrella, the face, the hair, and then add lots of different food in the background. So take some time, add in all those details, then you can add lots of color. I hope you enjoyed our drawing activity and our story of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And I can't wait to see what you make. Stay creative.